The topic for today is civilization and ideals, part 2. Civilization and ideals, part 2. Okay. In the previous video, we defined ideal as an immaterial or transcendental goal or standard which one willingly and consciously espouses, believes it to be right, and tries to live by it and to live up to it. Okay. Now, in the previous video, civilization and ideals, we took a general philosophical view, let's say, of what ideals are and how they relate to the state of civilization. Now, in this video, I'd like to take a little more technical point of view of ideals and civilization. Okay, now, when I say a technical point of view, what do I really mean? Essentially, how something works, right? When we use the word technical, we really basically talk about how things work or should work. Now, every organization, every effort, every group that operates and achieves anything must operate on some essential stated truths on which all will agree. That is necessary. That's necessary for a number of reasons, really. You know, you just take two people, you know, doing any work together. They have to at least agree on what are they doing and how are they going to do it, right? If you want to tend a garden together, you know, you must agree on some very basic truths about the garden, like that it's better green than you know, than brown. Yeah, you know, you need to water it. You agree what grass is, and then you need to cut it, mow it, you know, and so forth. So you have to agree on some very basic things, so that you know what you're doing, why you're doing it, what is your goal, and how you're going to do it, which, you know, this is something that builds upon what you're doing and why you're doing it, was the end goal. And so that you understand each other. So that you make sure that, you know, you tell the other guy, well, today it's your turn to water the garden, so that he knows what you mean. So it sounds simplistic, but it is necessary. It is necessary. Yeah. Sure. I mean, you must both agree that what grass is, what water is, what watering is, and that garden needs a regular watering, so forth. So I think it's pretty self-evident. So if you want to have an effective communication and mutual understanding, and you want to be able to achieve anything in a real sense, you need to agree on some basic things from which you operate, right? On the basis of which you operate and coordinate and so on. And in science, these essential stated truths, which all agree upon, are called axioms. Axioms. And these axioms are not, actually, they're not proven in the given discipline, the given area, the given subject. But they're simply taken at face value. Was they considered the most likely, most highly probable, or self-evident, right? Now, axiom, axiom, Jesus, sounds, weird. A big word, axiom. What is that? But it's a simple concept, really. You see, come to somebody in time, see the truth is that, and therefore we have to. And he's a nitpicker, and he tells you, but is it really? Are you sure it's true? Is it true? Can you prove that? And you say, yes, I can prove it. And the proof of it is, of this and that. And he says, yeah, okay, makes splendid sense. But, he's he's a doubting fellow. And he says, but, but can you prove that proof? And you say, yes, actually I can. And the proof of that proof is, this and that and the other thing, and so on it goes. And but it cannot go indefinitely. You cannot indefinitely keep asking for a proof of the proof of the proof of the proof of the proof that, and so on. It has to end somewhere. It has to end somewhere. And where it ends is that you agree on some self-evident truth. And that's an axiom. That's what in science is called an axiom. Right? Okay. So you agree, for example, you have a good idea one day, and you go out and you say everybody and me and say, look, let's agree that all things fall down, to the ground. They don't fall up in the sky. And they say, yeah, sure, no problem with that. Who would deny that? Obviously, you can see it. Take anything, drop it, and one fall up in the sky, on the ground. Sure, what's your problem? Only a fool would dispute that. And so you get a self-evident truth, right? So you might say you have an axiom. Now, some may argue that a statement of this kind is not an axiom in a strictly scientific definition, but yeah, for our purposes here, it's good enough. It's good enough for demonstration, right? So let's say we now have this axiom that all things fall down to the ground and none fall up in the sky. So apparently, seems the Earth is attracting things, not repelling them, right? Now the funny thing is that without axioms, you cannot effectively compare or differentiate. God forbid I say discriminate, right? In its original sense. Discriminate between things, discriminate between black and white, or green and red, day and night, and so forth. But discriminate has developed, such a negative connotation, and it's a very charged word nowadays. So yeah. Sort of sad when words as such, which are simply symbols, it's just a scribble, like a miniature collection of matter, whatever. It's sort of sad when words become more important than what you intend, what you mean, what really is in your mind. But yeah, it's what's transpired in our world today. So, but anyway, so you need axioms to be able to effectively compare things and differentiate between things. Because to be able to compare or differentiate, you must first agree on something, right? If you agree on nothing, well, you can't compare anything. There's no basis to do it. and you can't differentiate either. That's funny, but that's the way it is. To be able to differentiate and to compare, you first have to agree on something, right? You have to agree that there is such a thing as height. And then you compare things or people by their heights. But if you don't have the basic agreement that there is such a thing, such a reality as height, well, you can't compare anything by its height. You can't differentiate things or people, objects, by their height. Well, it's quite obvious, isn't it? And so, to go back to our example, okay, all things fall down and none fall up. All things fall down to the ground, none fall up to the sky. And so, the earth seems to attract things rather than repelling them, right? Now, okay, so let's try to look at, the force that attracts, that Earth uses to attract things to itself, and let's try to observe it more closely and research it and perhaps understand it better, and hopefully one day, to calculate it and so forth. And sounds like a good idea, I guess, but well, a guy comes around and says, but I don't agree. I don't agree. In my opinion, certain things fall up in the sky. So, no, there is no such force. There is no force attracting things to the earth. Or there are two forces. Wow, so... Okay, so I guess you'll have to two laws of gravity, two forces of gravity. I mean, two opposite forces of gravity. Or you won't be allowed to have any law of gravity whatsoever, because if you do, you may cross somebody and you may hurt their feelings and so forth, and you don't want to do that, and But where can you really go with this approach? Where can you get when you think about it? Not far, I would say. Not very far. Where you would get is a place where everybody is just stating and evaluating and comparing and differentiating on any subjective basis. And another is doing the same on another subjective basis, and they can never communicate effectively with each other, and they can't understand each other, and they wouldn't want to understand each other either. So everybody's just talking and doing his own thing without any general agreement or understanding or improvement possible. So, is this conducive to a state of civilization? Well, I don't know. So it seems to give you boundless freedom, right? Freedom that even animals don't have, because even animals, well, most of them anyway, they tend to live in packs or groups, or you have all these various interesting, nice English names for various groups of various animals. And what they do, and a lot of them do, most of them do, I think. So even they have to, agree on some basic principles, like how it works in a pack, and what you do, and the do's or don'ts of a pack. So yeah, you would don't have to agree on anything. You can have your own subjective truth on everything. You're a man. That sounds wonderful. You're absolutely free. You are freer than a beast. You're a god. Gee, that's amazing. It's just amazing. A god in a jungle. Now, I'm not sure you can have a civilization this way, but sounds like you're going to be absolutely free. Absolutely free. All right. So, well, guy appears at a court, and he is a lawyer. He's absolutely free. he is an absolutely free lawyer. He is absolutely free of any truth, any shared basic truths, right? And the guy's charged with murdering a baby. So he murdered a baby. So he is guilty of a murder, right? Well, no, he isn't. He was badly abused as a child, and so those who abused him are really guilty here. Okay, but well, they're dead now, but they can't be brought to justice. Well, yes, they are. They are. That's right. Well, he killed the baby with his own hands. Well, yes and no. He was badly abused as a child, so in a sense, the hands of his abusers did kill the baby, don't you think? Oh, So what does this mean? He deserves no punishment then. Oh, well, punishments. It's a misleading question. Well, what's punishment, really? What good does it do? And so He has no responsibility for murdering the baby. Responsibility is a relative concept. Isn't it? Right. Okay. By the way, responsibility, personal responsibility used to be an important ideal. An important ideal. You and you alone are responsible for your own actions. And even omissions. And I would say that it is an important ideal for a civilization, because without it, real, effective, a fruitful cooperation among free individuals is impossible. Don't you think? You can have enforced cooperation, like something you'd have among slaves. But it's it's questionable how effective such cooperation is, and it's also a question how compatible slavery is with the state of civilization. And slaves tend to, not only revolt, but also to avoid their duties and so forth. But if you consider a free individual, at least free in terms of civil liberties, in political sense as developed in modern era in the West. If you consider a free individual as an indispensable part of civilization, and I think I probably would, then personal responsibility is inevitable for the state of civilization. Why didn't you come for work yesterday? Well, I'm sorry, but it was raining and I broke my fingernail and I was abused as a child anyhow, so you understand that it's always something or someone else to blame, right? It's always somebody or something else to blame. It's always the circumstances. Well, if you can't take personal responsibility, if you can't own up to it and take the consequences, you espouse no ideal of personal responsibility. You espouse no such ideal. And another question is, what does this do to your self-respect? I'm too little, I'm too weak, I am just the result of my circumstances, I can never influence anything. What does this do to your self-respect? Is somebody speaking like this? Does he sound like a civilization builder to you? But sorry for the digression, and let's get back to axioms. Okay? Axioms. Now, in closing, let me point to you as an example the theories of geocentrism and heliocentrism. Geocentrism was the theory that the Earth is at the center of the universe. And it was later replaced with a more correct, even though not entirely perfect by today's knowledge and views, but more correct and more perfect theory of heliocentrism. That is that the sun is at the center of the universe. Now the funny thing is that without geocentrism, the scientists would hardly have later come up with a better theory of heliocentrism. Why? Because at one time they all had as their operating scientific basis geocentrism. The theory that the Earth is at the center of the universe. And as the scientific methods developed and they got better tools of observation, and the observations, accumulated and got more precise, and knowledge accumulated and so forth, and they started noticing discrepancies and disagreements of the observed phenomena with their central geocentric theory. And however much they tried, more and more things came up that they could not satisfactorily explain on the basis of the geocentric theory. But the reason why they could understand each other in the discrepancies they noticed, the disagreements they noticed, was that they all operated from the same basis, from the same axiom, namely geocentrism. If they didn't, they would not have, they didn't have the same unified, agreed-upon basis to operate from. They might not, they would not have had, everybody could have noticed, different things, and that they would never have agreed on the discrepancies they noticed, or they would not have seen them as discrepancies or disagreements, so forth. And they would have had no basis to effectively communicate and understand each other on the discrepancies and disagreements they had noticed. Everybody would have just had his own subjective theory about what's at the center of the universe, or if the universe has any center, or so forth, and what one would see as a discrepancy the other wouldn't, and what one would see as a disagreement the other wouldn't, and or they would see it as a different disagreement, and they would disagree in in different ways and on different things. And as I noted at the outset, to effectively compare anything or differentiate, that is also to notice disagreements or discrepancies. You have to come up from some initial basic agreements. That should be obvious. That should be obvious. And so, axioms to develop and can get replaced after time with better ones. But it's much better, it's much superior actually to have poor axioms than to have no axioms at all. And to achieve anything real as an individual, but especially as a group, that's what's at the center of our interest here, especially as a group operating causatively and trying to achieve anything real. You need to have axioms. You must have axioms because everything needs a basis to stand on and nothing can just hang up in the air. You can build a house on proof foundations and it may last some time. Don't know, may fall down one day, but it may, you know, it may just stand there for a while, maybe for a long time actually. You know, maybe collapsing very slowly. May take years. So you can build a house on proof foundations. It's not that I recommend it, but you cannot build a house on no foundations at all. It's just not possible. It's not possible. And so back to the ability to effectively compare and differentiate, or God forbid discriminate. You cannot really compare or differentiate anything unless you do so on the basis of some shared axioms. You can only do it on the basis of individual preferences. Like, I like oranges better than apples. But we are talking a civilization here. We're not talking an individual and his or preferences and so forth. You cannot, without axioms, you cannot really compare in any real or effective sense on any broad scale. You cannot say, as most Britons would say, compare Germany as a country more evolved or civilized than African Congo. You cannot do that because there is no agreement on the essential principles, the basic stated truths, the axioms with reference to which to make such a comparison. That is not to say that axioms, must have be the same. Any, there's places and times that they don't. I mean, say if you lived in a culture operating on a more I don't know, say spiritual axioms, something like that, then you might compare Tibet or Vatican, perhaps. I don't know. As a country more evolved in Germany. That's not the point. That's not the point. The point is The point is, you must have axioms, and certainly, a civilization to exist and to sustain itself through time and to operate successfully must have some basic shared truths or axioms. And the axioms of a civilization are its ideals. The axioms of a civilization are its ideals. Thanks for watching.